Now are three of the country's best political analysts. We have Ed Rollins, Republican strategist and former White House political director under Ronald Reagan. We have Michael Goodwin, columnist for the New York Daily News, and syndicated columnist Miguel Perez. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. You just saw Bill Tucker's report about the rhetoric escalating on the immigration debate, and this is after we've been through the legislation. This is purely for campaign purposes. Do you see this damaging, perhaps, the Democrats who revisit this again?
I think it could be very damaging. I think it's a very polarized issue, and I think it's an issue that needs some calming of the waters and some thoughtfulness, and you can't have an honest discussion without being called a racist, and I think it's very unfortunate. I think there's a lot of people who are very concerned and want to solve this problem, but it's going to take some time.
Well, you know, you bring up an interesting point, because when they poll the American public, immigration is a very high concern of theirs, and so it is a campaign issue, but you really slip into this language very quickly with some extremists. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember Hillary Clinton saying anything like that in the other debates, where this question came up. And it's also odd because she herself voted for the fence. So I'm not sure what's racist about oppositions to illegal immigration, other than the audience that she was speaking to very much favored it, in her opinion. So that's the kind of pandering move that just always comes back to bite you later on.
Yeah, clearly playing to the audience. Now, Miguel, we just had another report that's from Lisa Sylvester that said Congress is trying to bring back immigration reform piece by piece in other bits of legislation. What do you make of that?
Well, I was in favor of legalization to begin with, so I am in favor of bringing it in piece by piece if possible. The Republicans, this is nothing new to them. They've tagged on all kinds of things to bills all the time, and so the Democrats doing it now, especially with the DREAM Act, which is, you have students in high school, illegal immigrants who are in high school, and they see this dead end when they are graduating and about to go to college, and they are charged out-of-state tuition, even if they live in this state for many, many years, but any particular state for many, many years. And it's unfair, because what it does is it basically discourages them. It leads to the incredible dropout rate we have in the Hispanic community right now. Why? Because they see that they won't be able to go to college anyway. It's unfair.
Well, where do you weigh in on this rhetoric, though? Certainly it is not conducted.
I watched the Univision debate in Spanish. I was able to understand it. And there was a lot of rhetoric. But, first of all, let's get it clear. The Republicans were invited to a debate at Univision, and only John McCain agreed to participate, so they had to cancel it. The Democrats show up, and all they gave us was demagoguery. On Latin America, Bush is neglecting Latin America. On immigration, I'm for comprehensive immigration reform. What does that mean? We've had several immigration plans. I don't know what they were talking about. What needed to be said was whether or not they're in favor of legalizing 12 million illegal immigrants. They didn't do that.
Right. Clarity is really lacking in this entire debate. One of the big things this week was the Senate and the House previously passed legislation to stop Mexican trucks from having unlimited access to the U.S. roads. That was decried by the Wall Street Journal in an editorial, and I'll quote from it. Yet another sign that the protectionists in Washington are growing more bold. And also we have Washington might also keep in mind that Mexico is not without its own remedies under NAFTA. Retaliation could come in the form of punitive tariffs on U.S. agricultural exports, starting, say, with goods from North Dakota. Now, of course, the reference to North Dakota is Swipe It Byron Dorgan, who sponsored the legislation. But this was Congress putting their foot down on some of these trade agreements. Do you think that we're in a new phase on this, especially in the campaign season?
I think we're in a new phase, but I think more important, this was a real serious safety issue, and I think that this was a test program that they stopped, and I think people were very concerned about more trucks with drivers who have not been tested in the same way they have here, and the trucks haven't been tested. And I think there was a terrible explosion in Mexico that killed a number of people, and I think that obviously added to the rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there are a lot of issues coming together at the same time here, which adds to the pressure. I mean, you have the toy issue from China. You had a number of products from China: pet food, toothpaste, automobile tires, all of them found defective. And then, of course, poisoning children with lead paint is not, is a bizarre thing, because we've outlawed lead paint in this country for years and years, and yet children are still getting sick from lead paint. Where are they getting it? So I think there are a lot of issues coming together here that have to do with America's relationship with the world. You had to talk about Dubai trying to buy the ports. I mean, on and on and on. So there are a number of things for Congress to get involved in now, and I do think it's a fair and good issue for a presidential campaign.
Mm-hmm. You know, the thing is, though, that if you start to take action on some of these things, you are labeled protectionist, just a blanket label. Miguel, how do you avoid that and still discuss this intelligently?
Well, look, you know, Mexican planes fly into the United States all the time, but they meet safety standards. I hope they do anyway, because I'm flying on one soon. All right? But, you know, so we have to make sure that the trucks that are coming in this country also meet our standards. Otherwise, you know, all hell could break loose.
We're talking about the campaign a good bit. What do you make of the report, Rudy Giuliani targeting Clinton this early? Should it not be among the primary candidates?
Well, Rudy is pretending he's the candidate, and the truth of the matter, he's got a long, hard campaign ahead, and he may very well be the candidate. But certainly for Republicans, to go beat up on Hillary is golden. I mean, it makes people pay more attention to him, probably helps his fundraising, and I think to a certain extent, he's assuming he's going to be the nominee, whether he is now or not.
Well, I think it's central to his campaign. I mean, he has argued from the beginning that I'm the one who can beat her. A lot of polls have shown him doing best against her, better than the other Republicans, and I think it does energize the base. And there are certain states where he probably could turn them from blue to red. So that's his calling card. That's what he's been campaigning on. He's using that in his literature. That's why he's going directly at her.
While we're at it, let's take a look at the polls, because we do have them here. The CNN poll and poll of polls among Republicans, Giuliani at 28%, Thompson at 27%, McCain at 15%, Romney at 11%, Huckabee at 5%. And so we're seeing Giuliani leading in these polls. State by state, though, it's slightly different, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, you got Romney doing very well in New Hampshire and Iowa.
And not to cut into Miguel, I mean, it's way too early. I mean, national polls are really about name ID. Romney still has probably less than 50% name ID. He's going to win in all probability in Iowa and New Hampshire. You'll all of a sudden have gigantic name ID. McCain is actually hanging in there, even though everything's gone badly on his campaign. Once again, it's name ID. Rudy Giuliani is still basically has that hero image from 9/11, and certainly got it reinforced in this past week when people were remembering again. There's a long, hard battle ahead here to win this nomination, though, and I think it's as wide open as anything that I've seen in the 40 years I've been in politics.
You know, before we continue, I should bring up the Hillary Clinton campaign. They're returning $850,000. They're also going to do criminal background checks on fundraisers. Is the campaign successful in putting this behind it, or will this continue to trail this campaign, in your opinion?
It says a lot when they have to start doing background checks on donors. Criminal checks on donors. That says a lot right there. So, you know, it's something for the Hillary camp to be very concerned about.
Well, there's a history. There's a history there, and obviously when Bill Clinton was president, there was some fundraising, improper people who were involved, very similar to this, and I think to a certain extent they should have done a better scrutiny of this particular individual, and I think giving the money back is one step, but making sure it doesn't happen again is the important thing.
Yeah, and I think she's got to address it herself. So far, she's just been sending her public relations people out or issuing statements. She hasn't really talked about this, and I think there are a number of questions that only she can and should answer, particularly if she wants to be president. You know, she's not had a press conference since January. She needs to, I think, face the press on these kinds of issues. Otherwise, it looks as though she's hiding.
That's an interesting point, but perhaps not to be quoted too broadly on the topic. She's staying out of the limelight on this one.
Right.
Well, all right. Well, we'll take a quick break, and we'll come right back, and we'll have more with our panel, so stay with us.
We need more customers. So, what? Advertise?
Ask the ad guru.
The first path, Yellow Book.
Excellent. Yellow Book. But what about the internet?
The second path, yellowbook.com.
What if people look on search engines?
The third path, trust Yellow Book to place your ad on powerful search engines across the internet. The path begins with Yellow Book.
Business is off the charts.
Wherever you look, Yellow Book.
This lush expanse of green does more than beautify our world. Trees help clean the air of carbon dioxide, a major greenhouse gas. As North America's largest recycler, last year alone, Waste Management recycled enough paper to save over 41 million trees. From everyday collection to environmental protection, think green. Think Waste Management.
Psst. Are you asleep? Okay, pretend I'm not here, but we still need to talk about insuring some of your assets for retirement. An annuity from AXA Equitable could guarantee income for life, so you can sleep easy. But what do I know? I'm just the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Anyway, give him a call. For me.
Want guaranteed income for life? Call your financial advisor and ask for an annuity from AXA Equitable.
We're back with our roundtable, and the one subject that we did not cover before the commercial was Iraq, which clearly dominated the week in Washington. We had this very interesting testimony. We had several reports coming out. Miguel, where do we stand now? The presidential comments on Thursday night. Where do we stand?
Well, if the search is succeeding, then what happened to reconciliation? Because we were all told that the search was to buy time for the Iraqis to reach some kind of agreement and come together. It hasn't happened. So I cannot see anybody calling this a success unless we have the political reconciliation.
You know what's really interesting is President Bush was very honest about this, and let's just go to a clip of what President Bush had to say about the Iraqis falling short here.
The government has not met its own legislative benchmarks. And in my meetings with Iraqi leaders, I have made it clear that they must.
Now, the administration's own report points out the shortcomings in very clear terms.
Right. Yeah, I think that you almost have to divide this between the military now, the government, what it is and isn't doing, and what is the prospect down the road for all of these things, including sharing oil revenues, a centralized government that can be trusted and can defend the nation. So I think it's kind of piecemeal. If you break it apart, you can see there's some military success as our soldiers are fighting heroically, and we're making great sacrifice in doing this. Question is, as Miguel points out, what are we doing with that? What's the space being, that we're supposed to be filling there? What's happening there? And national government, by national government standards, not much. And that's the big problem, because without that, the militias are going to keep killing each other and us.
Well, I'm sorry, Ed, but one of the disturbing things for me was General Petraeus just saying past the summer. It's really a question mark.
Well, I think it is. And I think General Petraeus was very, very honest. And I think he has had success in his surge and what he attempted to do. Obviously, the time will run out when he won't have sufficient troops, and the withdrawal is really about that as much as anything else. The key thing here, though, is this government has not stepped up. Their army has not stepped up. I think President Bush has made it very clear, as long as he's president, we're going to stay there. And it's going to be us fighting, and no expectations they're going to fight. And I think the Democrats failed miserably to make any kind of case against Petraeus or anybody else this week. And I think there was too much showboating and not enough real analytical.
Not only did he say that, he said it's going to extend beyond his presidency, which is really troubling. Because
well, but I think that was always clear. I mean, he said it this week. You're right, and that's the first time I think he said it. Right. But I think it's been for a long time. This was not going to turn over, even if it started having great success now. You don't pull 130,000 troops, out of there in a year. It's just not going to happen. So realistically, the next president is going to have to deal with it. In the short term, I think the presidential campaign is very much going to hinge on how it's going a year from now. Whether we have the next president is a Democrat or a Republican, I think is largely going to turn on how our forces are doing and what the Iraqi government's doing next September.
And it really makes the war the most important issue in the next campaign.
Well, you could see the political spin actually this week. The advance discussion of whether General Petraeus would be honest, if the White House would temper his remarks in any way, the attempts to discredit him in the media. You see a sort of political overlay over this testimony this week. In the end, how do you think he fared?
I think he fared well. I think the Democrats hurt themselves. I think people like Barbara Boxer and the MoveOn.org outrageous commercial and Hillary and others basically all sort of supporting that. I think they hurt themselves badly this week.
Yeah, I thought that MoveOn.org was outrageous. outrageous. I thought it really was a scandalous smear on a man who's risking his life and leading our country in war. I mean, it's outrageous.
It was
really
so
outrageous. And I'm not a Republican, and I found that outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, his record stands on for itself, and perhaps because it was so extreme, it actually had the opposite effect, that everyone rallied.
I'm not a Republican either, and it was outrageous, but Giuliani politicizing this whole thing now, trying to tie Hillary to move on, it's also outrageous. I mean, you know, it's going too far. We're politicizing our military by bringing Petraeus in, by everybody, you know, trying to bring this whole thing into the political mix when, you know, we should respect our military. We should listen to what they have to say and then make political decisions separately.
I think we can all agree with that. And on that note, I thank you, Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin, Miguel Perez. Thank you. Just ahead, Heroes, our weekly tribute to the men and women who serve this country in uniform. And tonight we introduce you to